Welcome back. Today, we are exploring something absolutely fascinating in this explainer. We're going to be looking at the profound cultural differences in how humanity actually arranges flowers. Now, you might look at a bouquet and just see, pretty colors. But as we'll soon uncover, the way a culture places a simple stem in a vase reveals their deepest spiritual and scientific beliefs.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, is a flower arrangement just decoration, or is it actually a window into the soul? In our modern, super fast-paced world, we so often just grab a bunch of flowers from the supermarket to brighten up a room, right? But history tells a completely different story. Today, we're looking at the striking contrast between East Asian spirituality and Western floral art, and I promise you, you will literally never look at a vase of flowers the same way again. So here is our mental roadmap for today. 1. Origins of floral spirituality. 2. The East, philosophy and space. 3. The West, symbolism and realism. 4. The aesthetics of empty space. And finally, 5. Modern convergence of art.
All right, Section 1. Origins of floral spirituality.
To really understand East Asian floral art, we absolutely have to look at the powerful philosophies that shaped it. It's vastly different from the highly decorative approaches we see in the West. In Japan, it all starts with Shinto, that ancient worship of nature and its innate spirits. And this merged just beautifully with Buddhism, which brought ritualistic floral offerings to the divine into the mix. Meanwhile, spreading outward, Confucianism taught people to use specific plant characteristics to symbolize moral virtues. And then, rounding it all out, Taoism and Zen emphasized inner reflection, simplicity, and natural rhythm. When you blend these four powerful ideologies together, they seamlessly turn flower arranging from a simple decorative act into a really profound medium for spiritual and self-cultivation.
Moving right along to Section 2, the East, philosophy and space.
Let's trace the physical evolution of this Japanese floral space chronologically. It starts with those ancient roots we just talked about, Shinto nature worship meeting Buddhist flower offerings. But then, moving into the Muromachi period, things get incredibly structured. A strict three-stem style called tarebana emerges, and this was designed specifically for the formal shoinzukuri study rooms of the nobility. By the Edo period, the Seika style solidifies, creating very rigid rules for exactly how elements are placed. And finally, moving into the Meiji period and beyond, avant-garde schools like Sogetsu completely break those traditional rules. But what's vital to take away here is that through all these eras, the structural rules evolved specifically to enhance the lines, the stems, and the deep spiritual silence of the art form itself.
Now, meanwhile, in neighboring China, floral art was taking on a deeply philosophical tone during the Song Dynasty. The literate class, known as the literati, revered what they called the Four Gentlemen. That's the plum, the orchid, the bamboo, and the chrysanthemum. And they didn't just think these plants were pretty, right? They viewed them as literal reflections of human virtue and moral character. In fact, they treated flower arrangement with the exact same reverence as poetry, calligraphy, or painting. It was entirely about self-expression and spiritual refinement.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is a term called yohaku. Yohaku is the philosophical idea of empty space, or blank space, that gives spiritual silence and meaning to the subject. In both Chinese and Japanese floral art, the empty space around the branch or the stem is literally just as important as the flower itself. By abstracting the lines and forms, they essentially create a three-dimensional painting where the empty space speaks volumes. It brings human emotion into absolute harmony with the natural rhythms of the plant.
Pivoting sharply now to Section 3, the West, Symbolism and Realism.
Let's move to Europe and see how this builds a dramatically different trajectory. In the Middle Ages, floral arrangements were almost entirely allegorical religious offerings. Then, fast forward to the 15th and 16th centuries, and the Renaissance brings a massive wave of academic realism and perspective. And finally, by the 18th century, the Enlightenment era ushers in heavy rationalism and scientific botany.
So, let's look closer at that first phase. Back in medieval Europe, flowers were used to decorate Christian church worship spaces, sure, but the shape or the natural line of the flower? That mattered far less than its religious symbolism. These were often literal offerings to the Virgin Mary or various saints. So the early Western approach was purely symbolic and highly decorative for the church, completely ignoring the natural, living rhythm of the plant that was so highly prized over in the East.
Then came the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and literally everything shifted. Flowers became subjects of precise academic study, human proportion, and botanical science. As Europe modernized, rationalism essentially took over. Horticulture advanced rapidly,
and flowers were firmly seen as scientific objects of realism to be accurately reproduced, rather than philosophical windows into the soul. The whole idea of using a flower's form to meditate on the spiritual world, it just didn't take root here.
Which brings us to our direct clash in Section 4, the aesthetics of empty space.
So the crucial point is, when we put these two deeply rooted methodologies side by side, the clash is pretty striking. The East Asian desire is to abstract the lines of the plant, to create a profound dialogue with empty space, and to really prioritize spiritual silence. But the Western drive, born out of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, was to precisely reproduce nature, and that resulted in dense, beautiful decoration with absolutely no blank space left behind.
Let's synthesize everything we've covered in this explainer so far. East Asia, driven by Zen and Taoist philosophy, aims for harmony with space and spiritual silence. Think minimalist branches acting as three-dimensional calligraphy, a real wabi-sabi aesthetic. The West, driven initially by religion and later by science, prioritizes allegorical symbolism and lush, scientifically accurate reproduction. It is the stark, fascinating difference between a meditative, minimalist line and a dense, scientifically precise still life.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5, Modern Convergence of Art.
Here is the fascinating historical twist. For centuries, the Western world did not adopt the concept of yohaku or view flowers as abstract philosophical forms. That deeply Eastern style of expression simply didn't exist in Europe. But then, in the 20th century, Japanese thought was widely introduced to the West. During the modernist movement, Western artists and floral designers finally embraced the philosophical concept of Eastern floral space. The profound ideas of empty space, line, and spiritual abstractions suddenly began to influence Western art and floral design in a massive, truly transformative way. It was a real game changer.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. If modern art relies on blending completely different cultural lenses, like Eastern spiritual space and Western scientific realism colliding, what entirely new philosophies are going to shape our aesthetic future? We've seen how centuries of religion, science, and philosophy have totally dictated how we place a simple stem in water. So, the next time you see an everyday vase of flowers, I really urge you to look closer. Look at the lines, look at the empty space, and remember the profound global history sitting right there on your table. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.